Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday evening to you all. Hope you guys are enjoying your weekend so far and have enjoyed your day. Hopefully, most of you all have a 3-day weekend out in front of you as we are celebrating the 4th of July here in the next couple days, which I hate it falls on a Monday. I don't know about you guys, but when the 4th of July falls on a Monday or Tuesday, and then you have to turn around and go to work the next day, most of us do, it just kind of dampens the excitement for it. I mean, you stay up late. You shoot fireworks. For me and my family, we crash very, very early, and then we get up very, very early. I usually get up, literally, guys, 6 out of 7 days a week. I wake up at about 4 or 4:30 in the morning and do my morning routine workout, set up my video, things like that. So my day starts early, and it ends pretty early. So 4th of July, I'm going to try to make it, guys, maybe twirl some sparklers around, shoot some fireworks, but we'll still probably be in bed by 9:30, no lie. But anyways, let's get off that. In this evening's video, we're going to talk about the tropics, but I will mention this might be the last video on the tropics for some time. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss what we can really expect over the next couple weeks and going into July, going into the halfway part of July, maybe touching on a little bit on the second half of July, and talk about what we can expect out there. Is there anything we're watching? Is there a favorable area that we're watching, favorable environment? We're going to talk a little bit about that. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider that. Like the video if you like it. I appreciate the amazing support. June was certainly my slowest month of 2022. It definitely was. It beat out May, actually by a long shot to a degree. But anyways, it's all good. We're rocking and rolling through summer. And I know there's some active times and some growing times ahead. So I really appreciate people who have tuned in, regardless if it's slow, busy, or whatever it may be. If you guys got anything I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rolling here. Let's take a look at the entire Atlantic basin, the Southwest Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the tropical Atlantic. So there's three things we can look at here. One is this pretty vigorous tropical wave, which honestly, in my opinion, I did not think it would look this impressive, but let me tell you, the environmental aloft and the upper levels of the atmosphere are not supportive for this to develop. It's just a tropical wave scooting through areas of the Eastern Caribbean. It's just going to affect areas of the Greater Antilles, Dominican Republic, Haiti, things like that here in the next couple of days. And then we have Tropical Storm Bonnie has now fully entered the Eastern Pacific, so it will continue to chug on along and not really bother anybody. It's not even really going to bother the Pacific side of Mexico, instead of just bring swells and rip currents to the beaches along that. Then we have what's left over of Colin, which was our surprise. We discussed this in the video this morning, and here we go. We can take a closer look at this. This is the swirl. We're starting to lose a little daylight, so it's starting to get darker, but this is the satellite visibility here. And this is actually the center of Colin, still a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. All the main showers and thunderstorms, the mid-level convection is really getting sheared and pushed away from the low-level circulation. But you can look at the low-level circulation and look at all these low-level clouds kind of spinning around this actual center of circulation, which has kind of been grinding the Carolina coastline for some time now throughout the last 24, 36 hours. This is going to head right over Wilmington here in the next hour or two. So, you're not going to really see much. Maybe a storm could pop up along the circulation, but these clouds up here are actually associated with something totally different, with some storms driven off an outflow boundary that is now has entered fully the Carolinas. We'll see how that reacts today. But interesting feature. Low pressure right here is, per the last update, this is probably a little bit further northeast now, but it was sitting right over Horry County, Myrtle Beach, over the last hour. So it's actually been straddling land. You can actually say it formed technically over land, even though I'm willing to say as early as yesterday morning, this was a tropical storm. I think the National Hurricane Center just did not want to pull the trigger on it, but last night, there was 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts in areas around Charleston. Not a lot, but some trees got pushed down and knocked down. So this has definitely caused some isolated damage, but nothing too crazy. So this will continue to move out the picture. This will scoot over the Outer Banks overnight into tomorrow, and then pretty much the rest is history. So let's talk ahead. So let's talk about what has been in place over the last week. So what we have had here, what you're going to see here, and we'll talk about this occasionally throughout hurricane season, it's what we call MJO phases. So I'm going to really narrow this down and make it very simple. What you see on the screen, the orange, the yellow, that is sinking air. The blue you see on the screen, that is rising air. Sinking air really is a stabilizer, if you will, to tropical development. Sinking air really doesn't provide convection. It doesn't allow convection is what I'm trying to say. And basically, you're not going to get any if any, tropical development when you have this big blob of more basically warmer colors over this area per this website. Dr. Venice has created an awesome site here for people to look at. It's not super, crazy or anything like that. There's not a lot of options, but this is pretty cut and dry here. But the blue here, if you look at the dates here, this MJO phases or waves or whatever you want to call it move from west to east. So the opposite direction as most of these tropical systems move across the tropical Atlantic. So this starts out, and let's go on and see if we can pause this. This starts out on the 27th. So this is when Bonnie was kind of in this area right into here. So if you notice, this is when this blue was right here. This is rising air. Rising air, think of rising air as this helps to ventilate systems. It helps to create anticyclonic circulations out here, which help to push air away from the circulation of these centers so more air can rise, more convection, more storms. So in general, where you see the blue, tropical development is a little bit more favorable, if not way more favorable. So this was the case over the tropical Atlantic over the last several days. This moved into the picture and really created a favorable environment for what we had Bonnie. Bonnie struggled due to some land interaction with South America, but in general, that was kind of a, I wouldn't say rare, but uncommon setup, as we had a wave that actually made it across the tropical Atlantic and then eventually crossed all the way into the Eastern Pacific. So that's a lot of ground that what was eventually Bonnie covered. Now, if we keep this moving here, this, favorable phasing has since moved well over North Africa and is out the picture. Now you have sinking air. So an more unfavorable environment is beginning to enter the picture. Now, that hasn't stopped Bonnie from really getting going here in the Eastern Pacific, but this is actually moving away now. This is July 2nd, and now a more favorable phase, if you barely can see it, is starting to enter the Eastern Pacific. So right now, that is the case. So an unfavorable environment has now kind of entered the picture. As you can tell, this is for today, July 2nd. You have a lot of sinking air over basically the Atlantic basin here. So this will continue to be the case probably maybe over the next week or two. So I would say the whole entire first half of July, it does not look like we're going to have favorable setups at all due to this MJO phasing and just maybe a couple other things too for tropical development. But there is hints that maybe as we get past week 2, and here it is. This is right now, right? We have a lot of sinking air, kind of a relatively unfavorable environment. Now, that doesn't mean tropical systems can't form, right? But that means they just, probably are going to have a little bit more of a hard time. This MJO phasing, this links to other environmental factors that we look at really for face value, like how much shear is in place, how much dry air is in place, things like that. We have a ULAC in place, which is an upper-level anticyclone, which spins in the opposite directions aloft of these, tropical systems. So I'm trying not to get too deep into it to confuse people, and my delivery probably isn't the all-time best, but I'm trying to make it where you guys can to understand it here. But week 2, so week 1, about a week from today, still unfavorable. Week 2, you're starting to see this blue kind of creep into the region, and this is when we start to get to that second half of July, and I think that's when we start to re-enter, and this is when we're starting to get deeper into the hurricane season too at the same time. So climate-wise, we're starting to enter a more favorable time of the year, and this matches up well with a better phasing for tropical systems as we get into the second half of hurricane season. But, we look at this right here. We can also look at things like this. Is there any Saharan dust out there that kind of becomes not necessarily an outbreak, but kind of gets out into the tropical Atlantic that can really help limit any tropical development? We'll watch that. We'll get deep into July, and there is a little push of dry air caused by the Saharan dust off the Saharan desert in North Africa. This pushes into the tropical Atlantic, so this will probably limit any kind of tropical development also, along with the unfavorable MJO phase. So, dry air is a no-go for any kind of tropical system. So that's one thing we can look at here. And this pushes all the way into the Eastern Caribbean. So I really think the environment all the way through here is not going to be favorable at all. So we continue to move forward. And then another thing we can look at here is basically dry and moist air. And we look at this here, a lot of dry air out here. A lot in the tropical Atlantic. This isn't necessarily a favorable time of the year anyways for anything in the MDR, which we call the main development region. But in general, this kind of clarifies what we know, and that is there's a lot of dry air out here. And there's some dry air also in the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. And in general, you're just not seeing a whole lot that really screams any kind of favorable tropical development, but a lot of dry air in place. Now, once you start to get maybe into the about the second week of July 12th, 13th, you're starting to get more plumes of moisture down here deep in the Caribbean, maybe a CAG event or something, Central American gyrum, maybe can spark up some kind of tropical moisture, but in general, stays pretty quiet. Stays pretty quiet. It really does. Through the second half of the month, I think we are going to be quiet. We look at the Euro. And pretty much just look at the model in general and see if we see any spin ups as we go about 240 hours out, which is 7 days out. There's nothing. There's really nothing at all, guys. I mean, I don't see any fantasy storms, which means any kind of crazy tropical storms or hurricanes, 8 to 10 days out. I don't see anything. So for now, I think the first half of July is going to be quiet. And in fact, you look at the European EPS ensembles. Right here, this goes through 15 days out, which the 10 to 15 day range is a pretty unreliable time frame. But, we can look at it because it's not showing anything crazy, I think. But in general, very, very, very slow. I don't see anything really in the next 15 days. In fact, the EPS does not either. It doesn't show any crazy lines, any kind of signal for any kind of tropical development as we're looking at the cyclone locations from this line plot here. So nothing. That's not to say nothing crazy can happen, kind of like what happened with Colin, but in general, I think it's going to be slow. So basically hurricane season to tropics probably will not be a big topic over the next 2 weeks, I would think so. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Appreciate the support, and I'll be with you guys in the morning.